But does he agree with the withering assessment of the eminent politics professor Sir John Curtis, who says the current UK Prime Minister is the worst thing to happen to Anas Sarwar? And if he doesn't, and he should...
Chaos erupted in the Parliament as Keir Starmer was belittled by MPs from all sides.
He has to shout, Mr. Speaker, because they're so far up there, so few of them, that they can't get heard without shouting.
Stuttering Starmer resorted to pathetic insults as he had nothing of value to say.
There appears to be some panic on that side of the House, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
To ask the Prime Minister, I'd like some advice, please. What do I say? Oh, they really are panicking, aren't they?
The entire Labour Party was left in a panic as Nigel Farage stepped in to expose Starmer further.
Mr. Speaker, it's so hard to believe anything he says. This is a man who needed emergency voice coaching on Christmas Eve. This government is so clueless. It is borrowing £8 billion. It is so clueless. It is borrowing £8 billion for GB Energy, a vanity project that is not great, not British, and does not produce any energy. Its own chairman, Mr. Speaker, admitted it will take 20 years to create just 1,000 jobs.
Scandalous Starmer is out of his depth and getting blasted from all sides in Parliament again.
He can waffle as long as he likes, Mr. Speaker. But we know that Labour promised to bring energy bills down by £300. Instead, bills are going up. He's freezing pensioners while shoveling money to Mauritius. The Prime Minister isn't just managing decline, Mr. Speaker, he is creating decline.
Labour's chosen idiots are leading this country into a downfall only to push their sinister agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I can assure the honourable member for Rugby that Reform want healthcare to be free at the point of delivery... I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. There appears to be some panic on that side of the House, I'm not surprised.
The clash in the Parliament got disturbingly intense when Nigel Farage stepped up and got silenced.
What do I say, Prime Minister, to 25,000 constituents in Clacton, including 99-year-old Jim O'Dwyer, who flew a full set of missions on Lancaster bombers as tail end Charlie, as they're losing their winter fuel allowance, feeling the pinch, whilst at the same time we're prepared to give away a military base and pay £18 billion for the privilege of doing so.
Farage lashed out at Starmer for his ridiculous and hypocritical policies that only serve to harm British national interest.
Mr. Speaker, he talks of panic. The only panic is people using the NHS who know that under his policy he wants to charge them for using the NHS. And what he should say to the people of Clacton when he finally finds Clacton is that they should vote Labour because we're stabilising the economy and boosting the government.
Starmer's shameless response was so pathetic and laughable that even more MPs joined in.
Audit Scotland recently exposed the incredible funding crisis facing our councils in Scotland. £759 million of a funding gap. They also reported that the 12 councils that make up the Strathclyde Pension Fund are reducing their employer contributions from 19.3% to 6.5%. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that instead of taking money out of workers' pensions, that the Scottish Government appropriately fund our councils?
Labour's cronies got blasted for robbing the working class dry, and the terrified Starmer stuttered to find an answer.
Interesting, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister couldn't tell me when he was going to be coming to Scotland next. But does he agree with the withering assessment of the eminent politics professor Sir John Curtis, who says the current UK Prime Minister is the worst thing to happen to Anas Sarwar? And if he doesn't, and he should, is he think it's stripping Scottish pensioners of their winter fuel payment, or abandoning workers in Grangemouth, or attacking the national insurance payments of farmers?
Keir Starmer was belittled and ripped to shreds within seconds over every broken promise and idiotic lie he has told so far.
And so when he does get a date, he can even bring his Chancellor with him to back him up on the numbers, assuming she's still the Chancellor by then.
I remember when that rhetoric used to come from them sitting down here.
Order.
Starmer was left speechless as he struggled to give a proper answer. Instead, in another example of peak Starmerism, he resorted to disgusting deflection and completely avoided the MP who made some incredibly valid points. It's no exaggeration that this government has been utterly shambolic for the nation and a complete disaster for Britain's national interest. Even so, instead of being honest and responsible, Starmer laughs and makes idiotic jokes about the situation. It doesn't just end there, as Starmer and his cronies have gotten much more tone-deaf than before. Starmer isn't even listening to what Labour's own MPs are saying.
Now, though, we move on because turmoil in the Labour Party continues as Dudley councillor Steve Edwards has been expelled after attacking Sir Keir Starmer, accusing the Prime Minister of lying to the British public and abandoning the working class. Councillor Edwards, who represented Brockmore and Pensnet, wrote to Starmer urging more support for ordinary people. And get this, just days later, he was unceremoniously booted out of the party.
Delusional Starmer is behaving like a third world dictator. Labour is curbing free speech, and it seems that they don't want anyone to criticise Starmer anymore. How pathetic is it that Starmer's fragile ego can't seem to handle an ounce of honest criticism? The MP wasn't even entirely wrong if you think about it. At the end of the day, Starmer did break a dozen promises and betrayed the British public every step of the way. It is disgraceful that the MP was expelled for demanding more support for the working class Brits.
He says, quote, Starmer promised lower energy bills, support for pensioners and no tax rises, and then he backtracked. He's turned his back on the working class. Labour refuses to comment on this situation, on this case, but they insist Keir Starmer wasn't personally involved. Local Labour leader Pete Lowe calls it a sad loss, and Edwards will now sit in as an independent on the council, shifting Dudley's political landscape.
Remember all the pledges Starmer made during the elections? Lower energy bills, no tax rises, and more support for the working class. All of that turned out to be a shameless lie to win votes, as he has betrayed every single one of those pledges. Just look at how Rachel Reeves comes back with one tax raid after another whenever she feels like it. There's a reason why Starmer's approval ratings are in the gutter, and Labour is very clearly in crisis mode. What they don't understand is that no amount of damage control and suppression will fix this mess.
I mean, I've been critical of Keir Starmer for many months now, obviously with the winter fuel allowance and stuff being taken away from pensioners who have got next to nothing. I think the cut-off point was about £11,000 income, which we can't expect anybody to live on £11,000. In fact, the minimum wage by the government states that we can't expect anybody to live on £11,000. So obviously I voiced my displeasure with that, and I had a little bit of a telling off from the regional party saying I shouldn't be trying to embarrass the government.
Any good and honest leader should welcome all sorts of criticism, especially if it's coming from his own people. However, Starmer doesn't seem to handle opposition very well, as he has a mental breakdown every time someone calls him out for his idiotic policies. In the aftermath of Labour's scrapping of the winter fuel allowance, we're beginning to see just how horrible of an idea it was, especially since Starmer is spending billions on illegal migrants. It begs the question, why did Starmer and Rachel Reeves feel the need to freeze the pensioners if they could afford to throw money away at immigrants?
In a letter which I wrote to Keir Starmer and sent to Keir Starmer on Monday, and also emailed it to Keir Starmer, saying, look, yes, the Tories are at fault for various things, but you promised you were going to help, and you aren't helping us. So what are you going to do about it? And 4 days later, I had a letter saying my membership had been revoked.
So hang on, let me get this straight. So you emailed Keir Starmer personally?
Yeah.
And then 4 days later, you had your Labour membership revoked. But the party, Steve, say that Keir Starmer had nothing to do with it.
The worst part of it is that the Labour MP didn't even cause any drama or public scandal. It was a genuine and good-hearted attempt to tell Starmer what he was doing wrong. Instead of listening, the tone-deaf Starmer decided to just have him expelled. Proper procedure was followed and an email was sent to Starmer. This was an internal matter, and now that it's been exposed, Starmer's true colours as an incompetent and insecure leader are being shown to the entire nation.
So Steve, you say they don't care about the working class. Who do Labour care about then?
It's another man, isn't it? It's another establishment stooge. It's another multi-millionaire who claims his dad was a toolmaker, so that makes him working class, when really they've got no understanding of what the working class is. I mean, unfortunately, within all of the parties at the minute, we're led by rich people. I mean, where are the people with the normal accents like this? Where are the people who've worked in the factories? You know what I mean? We've got to have a voice around the table, but they just want to get rid of any voice.
All right, Steve.
If Starmer isn't concerned about what the people of this country are saying, then who is this man actually serving? The answer is just as sinister as you'd imagine. It's the liberal elites and Labour's union paymaster that have been reaping the benefits from this disastrous government since day one. Starmer claimed to be a champion for the working class, but ended up betraying all of us in the most disgraceful ways possible. Labour's infighting is just proof of how even Labour's own MPs feel betrayed by Starmer and his cronies, and the real extent of this internal revolt is much bigger.
It's not just the specifics of the Steve Edwards situation. This kind of internecine fighting was a hallmark of the end of the Conservatives' tenure in government. They were infighting all the time, and that's what distressed the public. That and immigration, but the infighting was a big problem. And that was after 14 years. We're looking at it now.
It's only a Dudley councillor. Come on, it's not a cabinet minister resigning. It's only a councillor.
Only a councillor.
The Tories had their fair share of problems, but the internal cracks were the main reason behind their fall from grace. The public cannot trust a political party that's not united, but there's an important difference here. It took 14 years for the Tories to face internal revolts, but Labour's already on the brink of breaking up within just 6 months. If anything, this might be proof that Starmer manipulated and gaslit everyone into following him, even the Labour ministers. Now, a rebellion is mounting within the party, Farage is threatening Labour, and Starmer's panicking.
Reform UK will hold the balance of power at the next general election, according to a major new mega poll of over 5,000 voters, which for the first time has predicted in British politics a three-way tie. And now Nigel Farage is holding the balance of power. In the poll's findings, the Conservatives would win 178 seats, Labour 174, and Reform UK 175. Now that is as tight as Chris Hope's wallet on a Friday night. And that would be a dramatic rise from the 5 that Reform won in 2024. Now,
within a few months, we've seen the Labour Party collapse in every way possible. The Tories have done well to regain trust, and Starmer has completely ruined the Labour Party from within. The public has zero trust in Labour, and Starmer's credibility is in the gutter, along with his approval ratings. It's safe to say that at this rate, Labour won't be winning another election anytime soon. On the other hand, Nigel Farage and Reform UK have become a major threat for Starmer and his cronies.
Now, meanwhile, Labour MPs in 98 red wall seats are panicking that Keir Starmer isn't doing enough on immigration to keep the Reform Party at bay. But with many other Labour MPs in favour of freedom of movement, and in fact, some even wanting to give immigrants the right to vote, is immigration a problem that Labour simply cannot or will not solve?
Many Labour MPs are baffled that Starmer is making U-turn after U-turn. He promised to do something about the insane rates of illegal immigration, and yet he has fallen completely flat on his face. The very gangs that Starmer promised to smash are smashing him instead, as the crisis is getting worse by the day. Labour is terrified as their failures are happening simultaneously with Farage's success, and at this rate, Labour's going to lose all support by the time for the next general election. Starmer has completely neglected or alienated the majority of the electorate, and it's going to come back and haunt him.
But the budget I felt was quite southern focused, or the announcements from Rachel Reeves last week, Oxbridge rail line.
She went for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, but she didn't really, I think the North was a bit ignored, I think.
I agree.
You're nodding, yeah.
I agree. There was a level of anger from my Red Wall colleagues. And my challenge to Rachel is do that speech again in the North, telling our story. Because by telling a story, you're actually attracting inward investment and you're attracting new businesses. So come to the North, please, Rachel.
Starmer and his cronies are incredibly tone-deaf and completely out of touch with reality. They do not understand the problems of the average Brit and are neglecting countless communities that need some serious development. Northern England is a prime example of that, and while Rachel Reeves announces her nonsense plans, the nation gets angrier by the minute. Labour's losing support because of this at an alarming rate, especially in Scotland.
In Scotland, the Labour Party hemorrhaging seats to the SNP. The SNP were all but on their knees, all but finished off, and they're back in the game because, ostensibly, of the winter fuel allowance. The SNP, of course, reversed that decision with instant popularity results. Aman Bogal, Labour Party are in one heck of a bind.
The SNP party hasn't been a threat in years, and now, all of a sudden, thanks to Starmer's massive blunders, they're rapidly regaining support. If anything, Labour could have learned something from this if they weren't living in a delusional fantasy land. If Starmer had reversed his decision to scrap the winter fuel allowance, along with half a dozen more idiotic policies, he could have regained confidence and respect from the public. However, Labour's simply too arrogant to take such measures.
These are people who have been left behind, and over the last 6 months, they've been told by this Labour Prime Minister that they are far right for questioning him on things that are damaging this country, that they are not worthy of the investment he's sending into that Oxbridge area, sending into Heathrow. But also, more than that, they're seeing also what's happening across the pond in the United States. They're seeing that President Trump, with a plan, with a team, can come in and within the first 2 weeks can deliver more than what perhaps has been delivered for these people in the last 20 years.
This is exactly why people are abandoning the Labour Party and either going back to the Tories or joining Reform UK instead. Nigel Farage's explosive rise through the polls has been majorly due to Labour's huge blunders. At this point, Starmer is serving success to Nigel Farage on a silver platter. The public has been disappointed and disillusioned by Labour because all Starmer knows how to do is peddle his woke agenda.
And look, for a government to be so out of touch and out of favour so quickly and still so far ahead of the next planned election is quite remarkable. It's, I think, unprecedented. We were talking about it earlier. I don't think we've seen it in our lifetimes. But more than that, I think people are realising that this is a government which is not just driving out wealth creators, extinguishing opportunities for opportunity. We've seen the job losses coming up.
It would be quite impressive if it weren't so pathetic. Labour won a landslide victory just a few months ago, and now they're down in the dumps. Make no mistake, we're witnessing the collapse of the Labour Party in real time. If they're this unpopular within 6 months, how much worse will it get in 4 more years? At this point, many people think that Starmer won't last that long, as the mounting pressure and the furious backlash will force him to resign. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is all over the news with huge announcements.
And by the way, in the modern world, to have got here this quickly, isn't it truly extraordinary? Doesn't it show you something is happening in this country? People want real political leadership. They want real change. That's what that tells you. That's what that tells you.
Reform UK's sudden success is so remarkable that it has left everyone stunned. Neither Labour nor the Tories expected Nigel Farage to gain this much momentum in such a short amount of time. Not only ago, Starmer was arrogantly laughing as he didn't consider Farage to be a threat, and now he's having a mental breakdown over Reform UK. The message is clear: Britain is sick and tired of useless idiots like Labour's cronies and want real change. Farage announced his new goal and directly attacked Labour in an even more shocking move.
The Labour Party have 309,000 members, and when we overtake them, we will be the biggest political party in this country. That's our goal, that's our aim, that's our target.
From just 5 MPs in the British Parliament to now aiming to be the biggest party in Britain, Farage has gotten more and more ambitious by the day, and it's all thanks to Starmer's shambolic government. Given how horribly this government is performing, there's a very real chance that Nigel Farage might be a serious contender for the next Prime Minister of Britain. It's not just the fact that Starmer's making idiotic moves, but that Farage is announcing all the right policies as well. Reform's plans are resonating with the public, and the support is growing rapidly.
And they betrayed everything about Brexit. Brexit was about taking back control of our borders. Brexit was about reducing the numbers coming into our country. Brexit was about getting rid of excessive legislation that ties up so much of the time and effort and money of the 5.5 million people out there, men and women, that run small businesses. Brexit was about re-establishing confidence in who we were as a country. None of it was delivered.
While Farage is promising a bright future, Starmer's betraying the public at shocking levels. In a move so appalling and stupid that nobody saw it coming, Starmer's trying to undo Brexit by chaining us back to the European Union. What Labour doesn't seem to understand is that Brexit was a golden opportunity for us to reclaim control over our country and policies. Labour is not only wasting that potential, they're trying to make matters worse. It's no wonder that the people are outraged, since Starmer's failing on all fronts. Even the illegal immigration issue is unresolved.
How many of those young men that have crossed the English Channel in small dinghies since you got into government have been deported on those planes? I think we all know the answer, don't we? So we're not going to buy in to any of this at all. And I maintain that a 10 million increase in the population of our country over the course of the last 20 years has devalued the living standards of everybody in this country.
Starmer talks a big talk when it comes to making grand promises that he'll never fulfill, but there's little to no action behind those words. So far, not many illegal immigrants have been deported the way Starmer promised to. In fact, he's doing the exact opposite by giving them luxury treatment. At this rate, Farage is right to warn us of a bleak future where living standards will plummet.
That overall migration needs to be, this is the one net zero we approve of. No more population increase through immigration for many years to come until we get some hope of sorting out the mess that we're in. We haven't got enough houses, we can't get GP appointments, our roads are completely overloaded, our infrastructure is crumbling. No population rise through immigration with a reform government is a promise that we make to you.
The Labour Party is beating around the bush because they're more concerned with their socialist agenda than the well-being of British citizens. Farage is offering what they're too afraid or unwilling to say. Net migration in Britain needs to be brought to a grinding halt till we manage to stabilise things and sort out the mess that Starmer has created. Unless that happens, we'll continue to spiral downwards as we simply don't have enough resources to keep up with the increasing demand.
These people hate our country. They hate our history. They are giving away a vital strategic asset, one that actually, because it's there, stops the spread of communist China in many of those parts of the world. They're endangering world peace. Starmer's friends have made money out of this. It's against our national interest. And frankly, I think what the British government are doing over Chagos is not far short of an act of treachery.
Starmer and his cronies have this hidden agenda that is inherently anti-British. Pretty much everything they've done so far has been against British national interest, and it's clear as day that they're not the least bit concerned for our well-being and prosperity. Farage is not entirely wrong to call them treacherous, and accountability is the only way forward. That's something you can help out with by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.